Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do. In this episode, I interview Juan Carlos Luna, founder of Law IT and managing director of Lawgistic, whose 3-decade journey pioneering legal technology transformation has helped bridge the gap between traditional law practice and the digital future. Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host, and I'm really thrilled today to have on Juan Carlos Luna, who is the managing director of Lawgistic and the founder of Law IT Group. Besides those two things, though, he's been quite the influencer. I first met him in Mexico in Monterrey, and he has been unparalleled in his the breadth of which he organizes events, that he gets people together, and really builds communities. And he's been an inspiration to me in doing some of the work that I do. And I'm really glad to have him on today and to maybe tap his brain and learn more about how he does it. But with that, Juan, if you could just tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom, for making these events. They're really interesting. I've been watching kind of the past sessions, and it's good to see someone like you bring people together and share the knowledge and share the experiences. So thank you for that, and thanks for the kind invitation. And what I've been up to lately is kind of with different hats, just jumping on the typical work on legal transactions. That's part of the work that I do, but also on the innovation side of it, kind of the cultural change, the digital transformation for companies, legal operations, and anything that has to do with legal tech, which is the topic that brought us together many years ago.
I know that you do a lot of consulting with transactional law firms and with in-house counsel, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with we started many years ago as an alternative legal service provider, what it was known at the time, and then obviously been transitioning into the modern form of these type of services with a lot of building synergies, building teams of different capacities to be able to perform certain legal support services throughout the region in Latin America and also in the U.S. That's part of the equation, and at the same time continuing with these consulting efforts or bringing more knowledge into the formula of what's going on in the transformation of the legal industry, the legal tech space as well, and anything that has to do with technologies and AI and all of that.
And I should mention, you work with your brother Alex, right?
Yes. That's part of the disruption, because Alex is an engineer, and it's funny, when I started all of this, and if you don't mind, let me jump a little bit to the past. I started in a law firm in Mexico doing corporate and transaction work, international work. And then after many years, after studying LLM in the US, I transitioned into the corporate world. And I moved to Dallas to work with EDS. And then EDS, which was at the time a leading force in anything that had to do with technology transformation. After that, I jumped to Compact Computer Corporation. That's what brought me, first to Mexico City and then to Houston. And once I joined Compact transitioned into the HP, the Hewlett-Packard merger and all of that. So I had the benefit of working very closely in the tech industry, in the booming tech industry, when it was the computer being personal again at that time, then to the transformation of bringing these three big companies together. And I jumped onto that when you were asking about Alex, is because it was not very common to see, a lawyer join forces and partner with an engineer, which nowadays is almost a must in many, many instances. So that's how we built Lawit Group. And in Lawit Group, we've been doing a lot of this type of not only the events, because the events is really, as you do, is bringing people, with certain expertise on the topics to really share the knowledge and talk about what the trends are, what's happening in the industry. And the mixture couldn't be better, because when I was at HP, after many years of being the general counsel for Latin America, they brought me to a special position, which was a global position in charge of overlooking it was a very small team of 3 or 4 people. And we were overlooking the legal operation, the legal activities of the entire company. So we had a chance to look at how the different regions were managing the legal aspects of their operations. We compared systems, providers, fees, anything that had to do with the legal aspect of running a business on a global scale. And at that point, I'm talking to you probably 15 years ago. That's when we started to work with firms that were at that time startups, and now have become really monsters on the transformation of the legal industry per se. And when I saw that, and after experiences of having been able to work on that specific item and challenge of transforming the operation of a huge legal department at HP, I decided to kind of part ways to do the same on my own. And I turned to my brother as an engineer to help me out in doing that, because obviously engineers have much more process-oriented education experience and everything than lawyers, at least in the old-fashioned way of educating a lawyer. I know that is changing, and that helps a lot, but obviously the matter of having a different mindset adds a lot in terms of processes, projects, and everything that has to do with it.
100%. And I think that it's a unique partnership that you have with your brother, because you both bring different skills to the table, and and it's encapsulated in the name, right? Law and IT.
Correct.
Together.
Yep. That was part of the experiment, and it's been very positive. I think people understand that a lot of what is required right now is a lot of flexibility, a lot of innovation. And innovation comes with really true exercises of trying things in a different way, and adding an undeniable truth that the legal sector is not the same as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It has completely changed, and it's changing at the speed of light. And one of those changes is that there are many players in the legal field per se that are not lawyers, and that's good. I remember one of these events, I don't know if it was the one in Monterrey that you mentioned, but many years ago, we had a guest from Spain, and he was saying, bad news for the lawyers in the room, but the legal sector, the legal industry, is not owned by lawyers exclusively. It's owned by whoever can add value to everything that happens in that industry. And that industry has obviously a lot of deep core legal aspects, but also has a big percentage of processes, procedures, technology, and so forth. That those are I was going to say the newcomers. They're not the newcomers, because they've been, kind of in the launch of the old-fashioned lawyering skills into transforming it as a synergy of different players.
Well, definitely. And let's say that for all of this right now, this is a good teaser for everyone watching and listening about what we'll get back to. But as you know, with my podcast, I want to go into Juan's origin story and how he got started. So if you don't mind sharing, like, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Mexico City. I was born in Mexico City, grew up, studied everything until law school in Mexico City. Kind of in the southern part of Mexico City, which is a huge city, as you know, nowadays probably 20 plus million people. Very exciting, very full of activity every single second, and a lot of legal activity per se, because it's the heart of Mexico by itself. Almost everything happens in Mexico City. So there's a lot of transaction work. I started working in a big law firm. And I spent many years there until I jumped to the U.S. to do an LLM at Georgetown, and I spent a couple of years in Washington.
let's pause on that for a second. I do want to get to that. Your experience in law school at Universidad Panamericana and Georgetown. But before, can you share with us a little bit about like what was it like? Your childhood in Mexico City. Like it does. It's a huge. Like it. I mean, big city doesn't encapsulate it. It's a very like amazing, energetic city. And how do you think that influenced you and your choices? What was your family like? Did they, were your parents, were either one of them lawyers, or like what kind of environment was that for you?
Sure, I can tell it was a very traditional family in Mexico on those decades, on the 60s and 70s. Very traditional in terms of normal, very family oriented environment. That's kind of I think it still is, but it was more than kind of that family closeness oriented. People didn't move that much. That's to compare with right now. I mean, I have a bunch of nephews, and a bunch of them live abroad. At that time, that wasn't the case. It was pretty much you stay put to the typical things of going to school, local, whatever, and then work on whatever job you can get around the area. There was not that a lot of mobility compared with the U.S. That was not the case. Still, it isn't as much as you see in the U.S. that there is just a lot of mobility all over the place, and people switching places and states and so forth for changing jobs. That was not the case. It was a very formal, traditional way of staying where you were born and grown that place. So definitely the change of going to another country to study and to search for other opportunities in this specific field wasn't the norm, just to put it in those terms. So it was a little bit of a challenging disruption activity per se.
Well, even in the idea of going to law school, like where did that come from? Was it something? What did you study undergrad?
Well, it's different because in Mexico we don't have the same system. So basically, you go to high school, you end up high school. The last year you kind of choose an area of that could have some relevance, but that's it. And then you go directly to, in this case, to law school or to whatever area of study that you want to achieve. So you go directly to that. In my case, it was not a family thing. There are no lawyers in my family that precede me. It was just something that grew on me on the the ideal of justice. Pretty much that was the case.
Even though there wasn't anyone in your family who had been a lawyer before, did you get any early influences from your parents as to them encouraging you, or maybe they had different ideas?
No, I mean, I grew in a family that, my dad at that time was a businessman all the time, very close to the business, the company, the heart of a company, of leading a company, big company, and really getting all those, day-to-day meals with him, talking about the issues at the company, the type of challenges, the circumstances, the human side of it, because he's always been very, very close to the human side of it, the benefit to the employees, to the community, and all of that. So that brought to me, I think, directly and indirectly, a desire on building the two blocks together, which is the corporation, the business, the corporate side of it, and the legal side, how to make it all work and how to put the pieces together so that it makes a real difference in terms of how the love of both, kind of the transactional work and the legal aspect of it, came to bear fruit and guide me through this definition process.
And how about your mom? What did she have an influence on you?
Well, obviously, as any mother, a lot of influence. In this case, as I was mentioning, very traditional family. My mother was a mother 100% of the time, which was probably the hardest job of all. I have four brothers, or five in the family, for men, and the little one is the sister. So just bringing together and building a family per se is not an easy challenge. So, and she was in charge of that 100%.
Well, having that support is really important at a young age, to have a close family that is supportive. And it sounds like some amazing, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall with your dad's talk about work, because, those kinds of things. I think it's partly what we hear, like partly the stuff that he would be talking about, but it's also just the fact of hearing that early on, that it normalizes, the idea of running a business or doing your own thing, or, like it makes it easier for you. Like I can see that, in what you do now, that having a business sense probably started with that.
Absolutely. And again, going back to that and the way that you fit from the experience of your parents is really the ethical compass. I would say that, to summarize it, that's it: an ethical compass of doing the right thing, working hard ethically to the correct way of performing anything from studying at any level to really doing the work that you are supposed to do.
How far apart are you and Alex?
Alex is 4 years older than I am.
Okay, so Alex goes off to become an engineer. You go to law school. And when you're in law school, so if you could tell me a little bit about what your experience was like in law school, like did you have any influences from law school, maybe professors that gave you some insight as to what kind of lawyer you wanted to be?
Sure. I think there's always part of that. Maybe not as as comprehensive as it is now in terms of the scope, because that's a reality that we need to acknowledge. That obviously the content of the curricula nowadays is completely, well, not completely different, but very different from what it was 34 years ago. At that time, I think it was straightforward. We didn't have all these fancy classes of new tech or anything regarded or related to that. It was more the core of it. It was remember that they talk about the eye on the kind of proficiency of the attorney. It was not that cross section of soft skills. It was more straightforward. It was the contract law. It was the criminal law. It was transactional, corporate, tax. A lot of those core to the heart of any specific item. A big difference is that when you study law in Mexico, it's very normal that you start working almost during the first year. You get a formal job, which is kind of assisting in a law firm or in a corporation or in the public sector or something that you mix while you study. You mix a little bit of experience, so you have to start very early working during your classes, and you go out to school at night and work in the mornings and so forth. So that mixture really give you a sense of the practical items, the reality of many items, and then the theory, the books, the codices, and all of that. So that I think that give you a good sense of the flexibility and the understanding of how things really work on a day-to-day basis, and being able to connect and to refer to what is it like to be in the criminal law side of it, with all the plus and the minuses and the conflicts and all of that in a country like Mexico, obviously you see things that are not necessarily all the time by the book. There's a problem of corruption that you have to deal with. There is a problem of access to justice that you have to deal with. There might be disconnections about the typical understanding of the spirit of the law to the reality that you see reflected in the papers, and that goes along. The one thing that I think everybody learns in law school is that that's the beginning. You never end up studying. Will never end up finishing understanding the new changes, the new trends, the new circumstances, the new phases that transform what you already studied and that you have to relearn. So that concept of forget some things and relearn many others, I think that's a must for anyone jumping into this profession. And I don't think that they necessarily teach you that in the first year. They should nowadays. I mean, 20 years or 30 years apart. They should teach you how to understand the changing, not the changing values, but the changing circumstances, and that you have to adjust, that you have to innovate, that you really need soft skills. I mean, being a lawyer without soft skills nowadays is pretty much close to nothing, to tell you the truth. So there's a lot of synergies that or correlations that you have to have in mind, and you have to train, and you have to put in practice.
Well, I completely agree with you. Having a sense of curiosity is extremely important, not only with the technology, but just, you're right, the practice of law, like thinking about how to approach it differently is, it keeps it interesting and youthful, as opposed to being set in our ways, which a lot of people, there's some attorneys that are. I won't name names, but all right. So you were in law school and you had a very traditional experience. You got to work at a law firm during law school, which in a way is similar to how they do it in Canada. They have this articling period where you go work for a law firm. In California, where I got licensed, they don't require that. I do think that, it is good having that practical experience, like you mentioned, that you actually get to see what the reality of applying the law is versus just learning it from books.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that said, it's within a couple of years that you go to get your LLM from Georgetown, right, for international corporate law?
Correct. Yeah.
And what was that experience like?
Well, it was completely putting something additional to the disruption by itself, because, at that time it wasn't that common to do that in Mexico. Probably easier if you were in the environment of, let's say, a big law firm with international clients, because there was an added value in doing that, to better understand, another system, to better understand another culture, to get into the details of practical matters on the practice of law and the consulting side of it from different angles internationally. And I think that was a very positive experience. It was certainly not only the school by itself, which was great, but also being immersed in a city such as Washington, just to see everything that was happening. It's a value by itself. I remember I don't know how I did it, but someone invited me to the Congress to witness the vote on the TLC, which is the NAFTA, the free trade agreement with Canada, Mexico, and the US. So I witnessed that. I was there, which is a couple of blocks from the Georgetown Law School, to witness, an event that was extremely relevant for the three countries, and at a time that, different from what it is right now. Everybody was talking about the potential of these trade agreements and the benefits and the no tariffs and all things that, curious enough, now it's kind of been in a little bit of a way destroyed at some point. And that's the mindset that you have to keep, not to be not only surprised, but to maneuver in this alternative reality that we're living nowadays.
Yeah, you're so right. I hope you don't mind, but to reference the years, it was 93, 94 that you were at Georgetown.
Correct.
And I remember that too, that not only NAFTA, but then at the same time, you already had put in motion the EU and, that coming together, not just as an economic bloc, but somewhat as a political union as well. And
Yep.
So the whole push during that period was towards
everything was that. It was as we saw many years after that, the tech boom. I think it was the trade boom at that moment, because everything was targeting this growth, these geopolitical forces coming together, bringing the benefits of the neighboring country and everything that can be developed by joining forces, and to setting the correct legal structure in place to make that happen. At the same time that it was, as you mentioned, the EU was being activated with all the power and all the complexities that you can imagine. But that was the seed of what we know right now. So witnessing those experiences really broadens anybody's mind to something that, on the positive side, can create a lot of opportunities, a lot of learning opportunities, a lot of working opportunities, and also to consider that the network is critically important. So the network developed while you're studying abroad and working abroad, which I end up working in a firm in Washington for the following year, and just making those connections were critical to the following years of putting that into practice.
I can only imagine what it was like being you at that time, because you go to school, you're studying international trade, and then you see this unfolding literally in front of your eyes with NAFTA being approved, voted up in the House and I guess in Congress. So I know one of your major jobs after that was working with Compact, but between that experience and Compact, like what you said, you were in Washington for a while. What kind of work were you doing then? Like, how were you?
It's funny. It's really funny, because you see how things come around. And after I finished the LLM, I worked for an international law firm in Washington. And I had the chance to experience really two fields, with what was international law, the trading part of it, and also environmental law, kind of the initial aspects of initial steps of those concepts of sustainability. And, 30 years later, I'm pretty much doing that, in terms of we've been getting a lot of insight and a lot of strong footage into the sustainability aspect of the legal per se requirements and regulations, and anything that has to do with the concept of sustainability, or ESG, which is now kind of in the middle of many different battles. But it was the seed of that. So lucky me that I saw the beginnings of what was that transition into global trade, and also the transition into that, let's say, environmental compliance, environmental justice, sustainable development in the very early stages. And that I had a chance to saw that firsthand, learn and apply it in Mexico for international matters. And that's what put me kind of in the position that I was, until I added the third one, which was the technological aspect of it. And that came kind of a mixture of luck and looking for it a little bit. I wanted to transition back to the US, to the industry side, to a company environment. And that's where I jumped to join EDS in Dallas at that point. And I jumped in another critical moment, because it was, 2000, it was Y2K. And so the same situation of me watching, how they voted NAFTA, and now watching how Y2K unfold and whatever happened, and all the planning before that. And everybody, not that many people knew what was going to happen. It was that terrifying moment of we're going to reach a moment that computers will fail, and they won't recognize the digits, and everything will collapse. And there was a lot of gossip, a lot of books, a lot of every single conference was about Y2K, especially in the tech industry. But that affected everything. So it was a very interesting. I would say it didn't last for months. It lasted for probably a year before, and then months after that people start to kind of thinking about technology in very different terms. And then it obviously grew into the dot-com crisis. after some years. But that's when everybody was going, mainstream in the first digital transformation about, the .com industries and everything that is start to happen in that area.
First off, you've been a trailblazer in many different ways, and it's pretty amazing how you've anticipated the direction of where things have gone, definitely over the past 30 years. For technology, what was it that drew you to Compaq? Because then you work there, then it becomes HP, and what got you interested in that? Like the technology aspect of, was it the .com boom and everything going on with the internet, or was it something else?
It was that, because certainly there was at that point you have to really go back in ages to understand that at that point we were talking about computers, we're talking about servers, we're talking about mainframe. It was the physical aspect of technology. At that time, I don't recall, but if you look at the biggest companies nowadays, obviously they were not even close to what they are right now after 20, 30 years. But it was the hardware. And at some point, necessarily the software, but that was it. It was kind of the two main components. We're still far away from the technological disruptions that we've seen over the past 10 years. So it was a combination of really wanting to understand technology by itself and how it's changing the world and how it was changing every single industry. And also the challenge of working in a different environment, which is very different to work in-house than to work in a law firm. In-house, depending on the size of the company and the size of the legal department, is pretty much you are on your own in certain aspects. And you have to be very resourceful. If I can just summarize with one word, I'll say resourceful is the one that better describes kind of the main a tool that you have to have in order to be successful in a legal department environment, because you have to react to so many different things and topics and urgencies and priorities and damages and everything at the same time, one day, and the next day it repeats again and it repeats again. So there is no dull moments. It's really, you have to become somehow innovation in the very innovative in the way that you operate. And by bringing those two components, innovation and operation, I think that's what the core of the in-house life throws at you in terms of the challenges, because you really have to move at the speed of business. In the law firm environment, you also obviously need to move at that speed, but you're not immersed. You look at pictures, certain pictures of each moment of each transaction. In the in-house, you see the movie. You are a player in the movie from before the plan of filming it to all the way until it finishes, which never finishes. But you are a part of it. And you play along with different other professionals that have nothing to do with legal in terms of the kind of knowledge, but with whom you have to heavily interact on a daily basis. So that interaction by itself, it's like a master class for any lawyer to be able to understand not only the legal frameworks of the rationale or anything that has to do with legal, that has to connect with the business world in the way that you communicate, in the way that you measure or get measured, in the way that you inform the type of risks that a company might be taking if going through one or the other direction. So it moves the needle in so many different ways that it's disruptive by itself. And I wanted to have experienced that disruption as well. And I think that the in-house environment was perfect for that. And matching it, obviously, in an industry that moved so fast as the tech industry.
So I want to get into IT and logistic in just one second, but before we go there, I want to understand a little bit from you. Your last position at HP was as a legal digital transformation. That was in 2010, 2012. So like way ahead of your time in doing digital transformation. And what was it like there at the time? Like what did they mean? What were you doing in that respect?
Well, remember that a little bit prior to that, many industries went through the chaos or challenge of, let's say, the concept of compliance, the new area of compliance. That was, an area that had a huge growth across the board. So compliance has been heavily considered as a growing area in every single company at that time. And the other one was, and it was not even the title of legal operations. I think it wasn't even the title of that, but it was a question of how can we operate in a better way, in a better, more efficient, transparent way across the board, international, cross subsidiaries and regions and every single country or geography that we have companies or subsidiaries or interactions. So that was a natural transformation of someone, obviously the leadership at that time of the legal department, who saw in a way this coming, that there wasn't a rationale, or there wasn't an excuse for different countries taking different approach to the same problem. So why would they measure something in terms of efficiency of the legal department different in France compared with Brazil? Why would they hire someone in China with certain skills different from what they might require in Canada? So that global perception really required, and by the way, I mean, in the operational side of it, the engineers have been doing this for many decades. They've been operating all over the place, and they have the same project management and the same systems and the same approach to conducting business across the board, obviously taking cultural difference and stuff like that, and the legal difference. But the legal difference by itself couldn't be a black box that was the perfect excuse to keep lawyers doing the things the way they thought it was correct, and that's it. That black box of operating on silos pretty much disappeared at that time. And the reason for that was that there was a lot of pressure economically for companies because of the prior crisis, that they needed to operate more efficient. They needed to save costs. And the easy way to save costs is, either fire people or renegotiate your fees with law firms, but that was it. There wasn't much more imagination other than that. And when leaders in the organization understand these trends and how things are evolving into something different that have to catch up with other areas, with the finance department, the HR or the marketing or the business or whatever, procurement, you have to match up to the efficiencies that they might have in place already. And a way to do it is first to look at your plate, see what you're doing, and see what you can do better. And one of the first examples that we, as a project that we implemented, was it took us almost a year to understand what was in the desk of every single lawyer at HP, just to understand if the right people were doing the right type of work. And we started very nimble, very thin in terms of trying to realize how much time were lawyers wasting to prepare or do, NDAs, a small type of transaction agreements. So anything that related to high volume, low risk, the challenge was how to identify that, how to measure it, and how to create a white book, which was kind of the instruction book of saying, this is what we're going to do wherever somebody in the legal department gets this question or this request. So at that point, it was blunt. Again, it's because of the leadership that really took the drive to change things from the status quo into the innovation disruption. And when that happens, it facilitates to complete projects like this one. At the end of the day, we were able to transition 5,000 lawyer hours at an average cost of, let's say, $400, to transition that to certain legal project function in India to support those type of agreements, the high volume, the low risk. And the price tag for that was less than $20. So you're not sacrificing quality, you're not sacrificing anything, you're just gaining efficiencies. So when the message goes up to the chain of command, and when the general counsel tells the CFO or the CEO, by the way, we achieve this by doing things a little bit different, just by looking at our own operation and finding, the type of matters that we can do better, it's a plus, it's a gain for the company. And they see the legal department as a player, not as a cost center. Changes completely the formula.
That's an amazing story. The way you put it, like the old school approach is having this black box where lawyers, they don't share what they're doing. It's kind of like this thing where, because it's opaque, leave me alone, don't bother me. And what you were doing with others, but you were the one in charge of digital transformation there, is
it was a team. It was a small team, but it was, hopefully, thankfully, it was a small team of people from different regions brought together for that. Otherwise, it would have been impossible. But yeah, it was a great experience.
But taking the black box and then making it translucent, so to speak, where you were identifying, measuring what they were doing, you could pick apart the tasks and then to identify which ones could be done more efficiently, cost effectively elsewhere, and thereby making the entire workflow more cost effective. So that I would imagine that was the genesis of Law IT and Logistics, that you took what you learned there and then you went to apply that on your own.
Yes, and at that time we saw a lot of new companies that were jumping into this field of supporting legal operations, whatever. I work with firms in India, but also in the US. A bunch of players start really developing. It was then around those same time, about the 2010, something like that, that we saw a lot of growth in certain companies that are starting to do that. And it was that mixture. It wasn't necessarily lawyers, exclusively lawyers. It was a mixture of different professionals, different capacities, different experiences that were brought to the challenge of find ways to do things better, find ways to operate more efficiently, bring project management to the legal field, bring innovation to the legal field, help them maneuver through their own pains of how they've been acting and operating, which was kind of the old-fashioned way. Metrics maybe were not a fact of measuring. How do you measure someone in a legal department 20 years ago? Nowadays, everything is about predicting surprises. Completely changed. The formula is, I don't think that there is no one that can be successful in an in-house department if they're not being able to predict and tell the CEO, CFO, we're targeting an iceberg. We better make a turn, do something. But that predictability that you get by doing the right type of work and the legal support and the legal consulting, but also the capabilities of getting more information from data, getting more information from anything that has something to provide to the business in terms of the legal arena. And that's documents. And documents are full of information, unstructured information, and that's the challenge and the opportunity at the same time.
Well, let me ask you this for the benefit of the audience. If you could, what's the difference between Law IT and Logistic? What are the different types?
The main difference is Logistic operates as let's say, as an international law firm. as an alternative legal service provider. We do legal work across many regions or countries. We operate with partnerships. It pretty much follows the model of those kind of, at that time, new companies or firms that started booming in the early 2000 or 2010. There was a bunch of firms that came across as building their own model, different from the traditional law firm model, different in terms of it was not the pyramid, it was something much more, they operate digitally, no boundaries, no big offices. It's more of an interaction of solutions based on technology support and stuff like that. And after that started to operate at some point with consulting firms that help us throughout the way, someone told us, that's perfect, and it's along the way of the trend that we're looking right now is happening. It's disruption of the legal industry as we see it. And there's been a lot of talk about that. The alternative is not alternative anymore. It's new players on the block bringing some fresh ideas and some fresh operational models and bringing down the structures and being more lean and stuff like that, more project management type of operations. But at the same time, there was a big component that was missing, which was the technological aspect of it. And that's how Lawgistic came to be. And actually came to be as a force of sharing the news, sharing the experiences, trying to build synergies with experts all over the world that were thinking on the same type of path, on the same type of opportunities of bringing technology into law. Because that's it. It's how do you bring a new component to the practice of law, which is technology. And technology has been growing, along the years. If you look at, early was the internet was a big bang for that. But after that, it was then the .com, and then everything kind of got in the same process, got a big push because of COVID. But it was a big push. It was not the invention of it. It was just coming. It just grew faster because of that circumstance. And then to today's reality that we see, the main challenge is to try to catch up and not make the disparity of, the speed of technological change to the speed of transitional change in the legal industry, which is widening, and that's a risk. And the main risk is obsolescence. If you don't fight that discrepancy, it's not a very comfortable place to be on for any law firm or for anyone in the legal sector to be disconnected to this reality, because we're living in a digital economy. So there is no way, if your clients are living in that digital economy, business, digital transformation, if you don't add those components to the legal sector in whichever area you're simply missing the point. And that's how we came across, and that's how I joined forces, putting Alex in charge of the IT aspects and technological things that he's been doing for over 40 years, and all the project management and all those initiatives that for an engineer is kind of baby steps, but for lawyers was like a huge jump into the uncertain.
Yeah, one giant leap for lawyer kind, I guess.
Yes, something like that.
So in getting the word out, in spreading the gospel about law and technology, you've put on a number of events. If you could share maybe your most recent one and who that brought together.
Sure, and we've been doing that for almost 8 years, and really the purpose is, and actually it's not as a business, it's more like a commitment to share, I think, the hard news of you guys really need to put your show in order. You really have to start thinking about transforming your industry as a whole. And what we try to do is try to channel all that experience that comes from, Canada is a big player, Australia is a big player, Europe, Spain, UK, big players into this transformation of the legal sector, and the U.S., of course. So the proximity, the natural flow of things for Mexico and Latin America is a big push of North America, the U.S., Canada, but also Europe, a little bit further away, Asia, and whatever is happening over there. But the trends are coming from these key players because they're more advanced in terms of they've been doing this for more years. Their economies, are powering up this type of events of transformation and new players and new exercises and everything that has been developing in favor of all the industries, but specifically in these terms, if we talk about legal tech, is the investment in legal technologies, the maturing of all these startups and all of that. So we started to try to put the topic on the agenda for the first time actually in Mexico, and it was, I don't know the title, but it was something like Revolution or Evolution of the Legal Sector, and that was a big clash. We attempt in this event to really generate crushing ideas because in one of these first ones we had the CEO of Net Documents talk about the cloud, and that was probably 8 years ago, and I don't know in the States maybe not certainly news for the legal industry, but for Mexico it was news, and people at that time thought that it was safer to have the server in the closet of the law firm in the third floor downstairs, right by the garage with no access, rather to have it in the cloud. And people didn't have an easy time to understand that was the end game, that there was no more servers kept, in a closed door environment in your office, that you really needed to span and break the physical barriers of your own walls in your office or whatever, to think about the broader component of digitalization by itself in the cloud. Just to start with some simple idea, not even talking about AI at the moment. It was just talking about keeping safe the information, transactioning with documents in order to be able to work with them more efficiently, faster, easier, and more in a more secure environment. So those were the typical items that we touched on, and we kept on doing that for years. And the last three, we changed a little bit because we wanted to try to bring together those same aspects that I was telling you about my very, very early experiences, which was the sustainability and the newer one of digital transformation. So we built these events which we call Chasing Dragons, ESG and the transformation of digital technology. And with those that have been very, I think successful in the approach and the response of people who really wanted to know more how you can link together topics that maybe were not as clear as before. Obviously, there's nothing that you can do in ESG and reporting and all of that without considering technology to do that. And you cannot consider environmental aspects if you don't talk about the data centers nowadays, and you cannot understand the negative or positive impact of AI unless you understand the footprint of environmental impact. And everything is triggered. You see that everything is somehow triggered and balanced and compounded into the digital opportunities that can allow you to really bring those topics into reality. And those have been the latest ones that we've done. We're trying to invent something new, and I will reach out to you to do something together to advance on the legal tech aspects and AI.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be great, because I think, as you just described to us, like you've been, with that event and all of the events that you've been putting on, you've been practicing what you preach. You've been sharing it with the world. And it's, a lot of the things that you have described through your entire journey, your entire career, have been coming together in a very interesting way that you foresaw and now get to share with everyone as they learn about it. With the time that we have left, though, I do want to ask you a couple of questions that I ask, all of my guests, because many of us are very active, organizing stuff, traveling around the world. A practical tip for the audience, like how do you do it? How do you keep going and keep everything juggled?
Good question. Well, the first one is first, there has to be a motivation to do what you do in order to always try to improve, the process and the outcome. I would say that just to respond directly to that, it's a lot of choosing your battles. You have to choose what to do and what not to do. Because if you choose to jump into a project, you're sacrificing something else that you're not doing. So it's really prioritizing what's really important. Everybody struggles with that. I think you put it, you nail it. That question, kills everyone because that's the reality that we live on. It's a lot of information growing constantly. Difficult to be in touch and in sync with everything that is happening, unless you are 24 hours connected to news medias, supports, newsletters, analysis, clients asking for several things, etc. So you have to choose where to focus your energies and how to do it effectively. So as far as you can find some tools that can help you organize better and target your time and use your time in a better or more efficient way, that's a blessing if you can achieve that.
Well, those are great words of advice. Not only like tools to help you, but also like to say no sometimes, to prioritize.
Absolutely.
And with that, by the way, I'm just very thankful that you're spending some time with me today.
My pleasure.
So the second question is, after doing all of these things, what makes it worthwhile for you? Like, what is the part that makes it satisfying for you?
Let me go back to one of the first questions that you asked me. It's about closing cycles, as you mentioned, and I probably learned that at home early in those lunches together with my parents and my brothers. It's just about sharing. If you share, there's something positive going out and going in. So if you share the knowledge, if you organize, as you're doing constantly, events, podcasts, newsletters, analysis, books, whatever, that's a way of or teaching. If you share, you're giving that part of yourself that was given to you. Somebody helped you out through the process. Somebody guided you. Somebody that you might not even remember gave you the insight to take this path instead of the other one, or to jump from one job to another one, or to advance in your career. So everybody has been given a lot. So there's a lot of blessing in what you have. So not giving it back would be a tremendous mistake. So I think the purpose is sharing.
Wow, I'm gonna have to sit with that one for a while. That was really profound. Giving what you've gotten. That's great. I really appreciate that one. I think if more people lived like you and carried that forward, the better world it would be, right?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity for everyone to try to put something in the formula at some point, and just in this crazy world that we live in, and see so many things that don't make sense. We need to drop a positive drop in the ocean and hope that it transmits, and somebody else pick up the speed, the sensibilities, and create a force against many things that might not make sense to us. But that's history. That's the world. We're not going to change it. We're going to hopefully be able to alter in a way for positive on certain people, and that's what makes it count.
100%. Well, with that, how can the audience keep in touch with you if they want to learn more about LawIT or LawIT and Lawgistic? How would they follow up?
Probably easier through LinkedIn, and if they follow you, I will be following you as well. So we'll connect somewhere along the way, and yeah, for these events, and thank you, Tom, because you've always been supporting of all of our activities and plans and ideas. And I really want to thank you for being an inspiration for us in terms of you've been fighting. We've probably been fighting the same battle from different ships and different angles, but it's always very nice to see people like you so committed to what you do, and that's an inspiration for everyone. So it's me that want to thank you, and really hope that our path crosses again in several instances that we can produce something positive as well.
Well, I look forward to it, and you've been an inspiration to me too, Juan. And I hope more people, from this, attend your events and learn more, because there's a lot to learn. With that, I just want to thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thanks to all of you for watching. See you next time. Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.